Right, it's 7:30 and that's it. We said we were going to start off from. So welcome you all. Thank you very much for attending tonight. The topic is quite important for us to progress because you have given us feedback from conferences and different things that the climate change and emission is a high priority subject for our members. Jeff, last time we ran one of these Zoom meetings, some people didn't know how to cut in if they had a question or anything. There's a button somewhere people push and a thumb comes up or something, don't they?
Yes.
If they want to be heard.
For those of you on computers, down the bottom there should be a wee reactions hoofa doofa, and it's got all these wee icons you can click, and if you've got something to say, you can hit raise your hand, and it just puts a wee hand up in the top left-hand corner. And just above reactions, you can click lower hand. Failing that, just you can also put something in the chat. Down the bottom there, you can type to everyone, or you can type to a particular person. So, yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. So, the executive had a 2-day meeting in Wellington, not last weekend, the weekend before. And a major part of that meeting was on the subject of climate change, sustainability, and emissions. And I'd like to thank Dan Armstrong. He was he's come to us of his own volition and came up with some ideas. And we invited him along to our exec meeting, and the input that he gave us a good idea of where we need to go. Now, earlier today, you would have been sent out a climate and sustainability working group concept that Dan created. And it gives you an idea. It's not set in stone, that's what we're doing, but it is a very good plan for something for us to work to. So we're working with Dan on those concepts. Now, from conference, we got the major ideas or feedback from you guys that it's really going to be really hard to convert an 1872 steam loco to electricity. So after our discussions last Sunday, not last Sunday, the Sunday before, we thought the best process is that we need to lobby, and we need to lobby for carrying on using coal and diesel current at this stage anyway. I think you'll be all pleased to hear that. But we do need a whole lot of information for us to go to government departments. We also need to be looking proactive. We might want to use coal, we might want to use diesel, but we need to offset the use of that by doing other things like solar power, even using some outfits using biofuel. It gives us a better standing with our lobbying if we're trying to offset what we're trying to do with the stuff that people aren't happy with, such as coal and the current diesel that you can get. So the questionnaire will focus on some of those things and your appetite to look at offsetting what you can do to cover what you use on the coal and things. So I want you to have a read of that climate and sustainability working group, and any feedback on that later on would be good. It gives you an outline of what we've got planned. And the questionnaire, the main reason for the meeting tonight is to really stress that that questionnaire gets filled out. Usually we have real trouble getting questionnaires to come back to us. But if you want us to represent you in this hot topic, we need evidence and on what we do, how we do it, and what we can do better. You know, some of the Jeff, have you got some of the questions up there that you can put up?
Wake up, Jeff.
You there, Jeff?
His mic's off.
Oh, sorry. Yes, too many windows.
Yeah.
Hotline. Trying to think where I wrote the damn things.
You got the latest one.
If it helps, I've got them ready to go here.
All right. Well, do you want to talk to them, Dan, since most of them of what you've decided that were the best ones to ask? Do you want to just go through that with everybody? You mind doing that?
Okie dokes. Righty-ho, kia ora everyone. Good to see the people I know and great to meet the people I don't know yet. So with the questions, it's broken down into sort of a couple different subject areas. We'll start with asking for you to list your organization and the contact person that you'd like us to liaise with about this, so we know when we send through information, it's going to the right person. Like with the survey I sent out in June, individually, we'll be asking about your fuel usage. This time it'll be projected fuel usage for the 2022 to 2023 financial year. And we'll also ask more about what type of fuels you use. If you use coal, what type is it? And where do you source it? And if you've had any difficulties with accessing fuel. From there on, we head into the emissions and sustainability stuff. And that's pretty straightforward. Question 4 is asking what actions you're already undertaking. Question 5 asks what you're willing to do. And question 6 asks, what do you want FRONZ to help with? That's the 6 questions. And if there's any feedback from tonight on, you know, how we can tailor it or add extra little bits and bobs, there might be that inclusion before the final comes out. But yeah, that's the crux of it. I'll hand it back.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. So it's very important you guys spend a bit of time on this questionnaire. Margaret suggested that we send out the questions on an email, because if you fill it out and you stop halfway through and close it, you lose all that data. So you're better to have the written questions, or even write the questions down yourself, write the answers out, and then do the survey. Because if you only go through half it and close it down, you're going to lose it. So just keep that in mind when you do it. We've also asked NZTA to give us some data from the SPRs. Hopefully they haven't given us an answer back on that yet. Have you had a reply back, Margaret, at all from Ginny?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So there is some information there. And this is all gives us ammunition when we go and talk to MPs and inquiries and stuff, that we have the evidence and the statistics to back up what we're saying. So it's very, very important. If you want us to do this, we need this information. So I can't stress strong enough that you fill out this survey and get back to us. And then, as Dan said, if there's any comments or changes you think you would like made, we'll do that. We'll give you a couple of days to come back with an answer before we put the thing out. And we'd also like you to look at that climate sustainability working group paper to see if you have anything you'd like to add. We've also had an inquiry from the traction group people groups wanting to join forces and be a coordinated bigger group. So we haven't said no to that. It might give us a bit more clout, but I'm yet to hear back from them how they want to proceed. But they have some major issues over emissions as well for the traction engines.
I wouldn't be surprised, Grant, if these issues what we're facing is also is the same ones that they're facing.
Yeah, well, we've looked at there doesn't seem to be a coordinated FRONZ for steamboats, unless anybody knows that there is. That was another one we thought we could get. Earnslaw was another one that we were thinking of that we might, because that's a high profile one. And Dan's spoken to them and they seem quite keen to be involved. Is that still right, Dan?
Yeah, they were open to the concept of a pan-sector organisation, but it wasn't the focus of our conversation. So I think it would take, the president talking to the CEO type thing.
Yes, which I probably should do. Right, is any questions that you have?
Can I say something? Yeah, I was just sort of thinking that for the working group, I don't have any problems with us actually being relatively broad with who we actually have in the working group. People who have common problems and common solutions should be embraced and sort of brought into the working group. Doesn't mean to say that everybody has to be a member of FRONZ to actually be part of this working group. I think it should be actually a lot more broad than that. Yeah, that's just my thought. For this questionnaire, what I will do is I'll take it back to, and we'll do that as a group at Glenbrook tomorrow.
It's a very
good
idea.
Yeah. So, and then we can get that back to you as quickly as we can. Yeah, the other thing is that a lot of the stuff is, we need to actually look at design and so forth. Like we've got a new boiler that we've got to get together for JA 1250. So we really have to think about how we design that boiler going forward, sort of thing, because, we might not have coal as a commodity to burn. I'm tending to think that we will for quite some time. Certainly coking coal will be available until about 2037. But the actual good steaming coal that we require and so forth could stop at any time, as it did in Britain. So I think we need to be aware of that.
It's going to get more expensive as time goes along.
That's the other thing. Yep.
But like anything, time will make biofuels better over time. The biodiesel and stuff all might get better over time, but not at the moment. They're not perfect for what use we have. So until that comes around, but we do need to, you can't put it off. You might have to use some of that fuel. Like if you're a flat railway, you should be looking at alternative fuels somehow. But if you've got a hilly railway like Glenbrook Vintage Railway, you need decent steaming coal to get up and down the hills.
That's right.
So it's horses for courses. Really.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions about that? You got anything to add, Dan?
I think the main thing I look forward to is receiving dozens and dozens of responses from everybody. That'll be fantastic.
So we're going to nag you a wee bit. It's probably going to be a 2-week time frame that we would like it back. But I would like you to read that climate and sustainability working group paper and give us the feedback on as well. I don't want to make it a huge working group at the end of the day. Then it becomes too unwieldy, especially if we've got traction engine people and all that.
Yeah.
So I need to keep it small and focused. So we need to find the right people to be on that working group.
How would it work with, particular people like this? You got this chap Mackley down there. I think that is his name. Who's built this?
He's online now, actually.
Oh, is he? Okay. And also there's another group in Christchurch who are sort of working with hydrogen and things like that. So for these sort of fellows, how do they work with our working group? Can we bring them in, or do we consult with them?
Well, I
Yeah,
think
well,
if you,
Dan's been talking to most of the, like the SAM, and I don't know anything about the hydrogen thing. Do you know anything about that, Dan?
No, I don't. So
Yeah.
I
So-
don't just know because we've got the ADLs at the moment in Glenbrook clogging our place up, and they actually did do they had a request some time ago for to convert those things into hydrogen powered. So then they were interested in that. Yeah, so it's just another alternative.
Yeah, we've got to all think about that too. And
Grant,
we do
can I ask you a
need to
question?
change. These young ones that are that are doing it now, like Dan, that are coming here, they're the ones that are going to take over from us old farts, and they're going to have to change. So we need to give them. What are you laughing at, Dan? Yeah. And bringing these young ones
Speak for
on.
yourself.
Sorry, you're not old.
Speak to
Grant, can I make a comment?
speak for yourself.
Yeah, go for it, Chris.
If you follow what's happening in the UK, there's an awful lot in the Parliament that's relating to heritage railways and the use of coal. And they seem to have an awful lot of support from the parliamentarians, both at the House of Lords and in their Parliament. So, and that's got to the bill stage, and they've I see recently they've protected heritage railway through an environmental bill that's gone through Parliament. So I wonder if there's something for us as well in the leadership in Parliament that we can talk to people and try and get some balance between the carbon and the acknowledgement of where we're going and acceptance of the cultural value of what we do.
Oh, that's the line we're taking. It definitely going to take, Chris. Dan's talked to Talon Railway and a few other ones that are doing certain things over there to offset their coal use. So we are relying on the mother country to give us some information and ideas, I should say, very, very much so.
but this is why we need the data. If we're going to go to the MPs and so on, we need good hard data. It's no use us talking in woolly terms. We need the data. This is why it's important that we get it in quickly, we get it sorted so that we can go to the people who count with information that is really relevant.
And we also need to be looking at key people on both sides of the house as well, not just government, but also opposition. Because as we know, if governments don't get voted in, they get voted out.
Agree with that. I think probably the data that we're really looking at is sort of what is our contribution to CO2 in New Zealand, and it's probably very, very small. And the question would be, as Chris said, that what's the balance between us sort of popping out a little bit of CO2 and the heritage value of what we do. So we really need to be able to put that argument to the MPs and so forth, so that they can make decisions based on that sort of ground. So we probably need to know exactly how much CO2 we are actually burning. That's probably the key piece of data that we need.
It's not just CO2, it's also the other gases as well. But
yes.
Excuse me, I'm just typing. Yeah.
Rob's had his hand up for a very, very long time.
Rob, you're right, Rob?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
yes.
Loud and clear.
Thank you. First of all, I'll lower my hand. What I would like to do is to point out that there's a very real political risk approaching us. That's the environmental and activist people. One of our members is actually working on the Green Party's policy on these sorts of matters, and he has warned that our activity is going to come into the same focus of the same people as have done Fonterra coal trains, and we need to try and forestall that. I can expand on that. You were saying something, Ian?
No, sorry, I should have been muted. I was just muttering. Sorry, my bad.
Yep. What he says, in fact, is that the social license we have is disappearing as concern about climate change mounts. We haven't yet seen processes stopping steam excursions the way they have on Terra coal trains, but that eventuality is probably not too far off. And I don't think that's something that we as a movement have considered in any great detail, at least. It's something we do need to think about and to try and be prepared for. I suspect the mainline operators have got more to worry about in this respect than the people who operate their own lines.
Yes, very true, Rob. Never thought about that. Yes, it was a high profile thing of stopping a steam excursion, media-wise, which would probably be something, but I suppose we just have to deal with that and call the cops out when it happens.
Well, at the moment, the risk to us seems low, but it's going to become increasingly large with time. They're tackling the big users, Fonterra, for example, at the moment, but it will come down the line. We're talking about people who are not prepared to listen to points of views like ours. And while we may be small and heritage focused, that doesn't cut in the ice with the sort of people that we can run into.
Yeah, I think they'll very much be in the main centres, unfortunately.
Especially Wellington.
I think Wellington, Auckland, something out of Christchurch, that would be where it will be.
Well, just to look at one particular case in point, the last coal train sort of demonstration actually just stopped a Dunedin Railways train with passengers going up to Palmerston last year. So, so they can, and they got the headlines for that, I think.
Yeah.
So,
They blocked the coal train, which affected the Dunedin Railways train.
Yeah.
That's what it was over. But yeah, got good publicity. But the cops come down pretty hard on them, but it does muck up. All right, Sam, you've got a question.
Good evening. Yes, just to add to the conversation certainly around activists and so on, and what is it Niall was talking
Neil.
about? Neil. So one thing to consider is how we define heritage and what its role is, what its purpose is in society. And one way to look at that is, when we try and think of when does something become a heritage item, there's definitions around that. But when something is 50 years old, it's into the future. We're looking at the service life of the equipment being a lot longer to reduce the energy inputs, the energy investment we need as energy reserves dwindle. So I believe that the role of heritage organisations is education and inspiring people. For me, I wouldn't have discovered steam locomotives if it wasn't for the preserved steam locomotives operating around New Zealand. So the preservation movement has a really important role to play in not just teaching us about the past, but potentially, and in this case, also inspiring us and showing a way into the future. So the steam locomotive is the easiest piece of technology, transport technology, to decarbonize. Steam locomotives were zero carbon before zero carbon was a thing, before we knew that we had to reduce our carbon dioxide emissions. So something to consider is the positive influence we can have as a sector on how people think about the future and transport. The greatest challenge for us all is not technology going to the future and facing the challenge of climate change, but it's attitude and behavior. So I think we can have quite a significant influence on that, and it would be a shame to disregard that entirely.
Yeah, part of this is the working group paper mentions education and talking to likes of schools and things like that, all part of this heritage side of things. Thank you, Sam. Graham, you've got something you got your hand up. Ronnie Anderson?
I did have my hand up. Yes, I just really wanted to speak in support of what Rob was saying. My feeling actually now is that the biggest threat to us isn't the availability of fuel, as Neil says, that's still going to keep going for a while. It's actually those public opinion challenges. I mean, we've received in the last week a very, very strongly worded letter from someone who sees what we do as abhorrent, and uses the what would you think if I went to the media sort of line. And it is just going to be a matter of time before that actually starts having real inroads in what we're able to do. So if we can have at very high level someone in government saying, rail is actually producing very little carbon emissions, and what we do is actually really important, and they've factored that into their carbon emissions targets, and that's okay. Someone at a high level actually supporting us, and that's obviously, I think, going to be a real thing that we need moving forward. So,
is Jared on from Diesel Traction Group? Are you there, Jared? No. Jared from the Diesel Traction Group went to an inquiry into emissions and gave them a whole lot of details on behalf of more the TDG, and they didn't seem to be overly interested in the heritage stuff. So we do need to change the thinking. But as Clark said, we need the evidence to go to them and say that we don't burn thousands of tons of coal every Sunday. This is what we do and how we do it. And the heritage side of thing is very, very important. But as I says, we also need to be being offsetting what we're trying to accomplish by using coal and diesel and stuff like that. So we do need to be just not wipe that off and say it's not worth doing. It's what we do need to think that we're doing this so we can do that, So that's very, very important for you guys. Ferrymead's done a great job of putting solar panels up, saves them lots of money as well. So that has its advantages as well. And part of the working group strategy, like Dan said, is giving groups advice of where they need to go and get funding for solar panels or the latest information on biofuels and all that sort of stuff. So we do need to be proactive, not just sit on our ass waiting for the world to change for us, which is quite important.
Great.
Yeah. Right, we got him.
Again,
yeah, I see Rob, you've got your hand up again.
Yeah, thank you. I'll give you an example of the sorts of things we're going to have to face. I was at Weka Pass, actually. I was standing beside an engine burning a clean stack. Nothing visible coming out the funnel at all. A couple of teenage girls walked past me. They looked at the steam coming out of drain cocks and, phew, look at that pollution, was their comment. Oh, sorry, girls, but it was straight steam, the stuff clouds are made of. That's the sort of attitudes we've got to get past to the general public. And
yeah, well, the younger ones notice that. You look at me, for example, I used to smoke. Smoking now was the young ones hate it, recycling, we never used to do recycling. The world's changing and those younger ones are coming through and noticing this, and they're the ones that want the change.
You also find that the teenagers are very idealistic as well. So there's no grey area, it's black and white to them.
Yeah, that's right. Margaret, you've got a question?
Yeah, what I was going to say is I think with what was raised before about activists and someone getting a letter, I think what we actually need is a really coordinated response and effectively our own spin doctor. I think we've got a professional one on board, haven't we, Jeff? When we're responding, if anyone's getting individual letters that are difficult, that we're responding in a coordinated way. So rather than one group saying one thing and another group saying another one, once we actually have that information, together we have a broadsheet that people can work from in terms of responding. So we're all singing from the same songbook, so to speak.
Yeah.
You see that being part of the working group, Margaret, to come up with those responses.
Well, when we're talking the working group, I think getting that main working group with other parties involved is going to take longer than us actually being able to get it up and going ourselves. So I think we should do it as soon as, basically, once we've got the information from the questionnaire and then collated and converted to tons of whatever, tons of carbon, then we've actually got the ability to put that together rather than waiting on others. Because when we're responding, we might tailor it later on to include all steam, but we can tailor our responses around the heritage movement. And I think, to use an example, I remember you used something, Michael Leaf, and your talk at conference, that whatever you did in, a year was less than what Fonterra did in half an hour. And it's that sort of comparison that actually makes it really relative. Rather than to the average person, talking about tons really doesn't mean a lot. I don't know one ton from another ton, from what's big and what's small, but I do know if you tell me in a year the whole sector uses the equivalent of what Fonterra uses in one day, that's what are we worrying about, and that's the sort of response we need to be able to give and have available to communicate to people that raise concerns.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the Southern Motorway is another good example of that sort of thing. If you go and stand on a bridge and just watch the cars go underneath you the whole time, they're burning CO2 right underneath you, but also all the way along the whole motorway. It's huge and it's continuous. And you just do it on occasion. So that is something that it's a kind of a something that we need to actually emphasize, that our contribution is actually very, very minimal to climate.
And relate it to everyday things that people can understand.
Yeah. I think, even though I definitely agree with you guys, I think the other thing we got to be mindful of is the symbolism and the symbolic nature which the steaming, unfortunately, our steam locos represent within that great the general public as well. So there's the factual size, but there's also the war of facts, but then you've also got the war of symbols. So I think there's two strands to be mindful of. Unfortunately, that symbolic war is a bit more harder to fight. Because you've got, so for example, it's the steam engine burning coal versus the electric scooter.
But I think we should always sort of compare the steam engine burning coal to thousands of cars on the motorway every day. It's 24/7 sort of thing, and us occasionally sort of putting some coal into that.
I'm just being mindful of so those are the 30s, 40s, 50s. The facts will win out, but those in their teens and in the early 20s is all about symbolism, and unfortunately, they are the voters of tomorrow. They're the decision makers of tomorrow.
With respect, if we're trying to make the case, I mean, everything you're saying is correct, but if we're trying to make the case that we are a drop in the ocean, at some point someone's going to point out that the ocean is made of drops. Everyone is taking this argument to government that, well, no, we're just a small emitter compared to the big emitters or compared to the cars on the road. I mean, everyone, no single car is the problem. It's the combination.
Yeah, and we've always been the we've always been the unfortunately the poor cousin compared to the road transport system.
I think the thing is though, one car, well, it's one car of millions, but the heritage group is just very, very small, but it's got another value. It's got another string to its bow. So, that needs to be sort of thing. But the other thing is I get your point. I think we should be looking at alternatives. We are, with our new design for our new boiler and so forth, we're going to look at something that, burns whatever. I don't know what the answer is for there, because at Glenbrook, is it Sam? Is that your name, Mr. Macri?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Macwell.
Sam.
Yeah.
Have you got anything that kind of can burn at about 1200 degrees or something? You know, that we can put in to get us up to Glenbrook.
Yes. Well, as it happens, wood will make the steam you need. So I'm happy to talk to you about that. After the meeting, I can share a lot of information with you.
Okay, that's good. I'll share that with our engineer chaps at Glenbrook and so forth. I'm probably the wrong person to talk to because I'm not that technically minded, but I do know the people who are. So,
yeah. So, but we're not the only people that are groups or organisation that's going to go to the government. Like I've got a 1957 Vauxhall. I don't think I'll be converting that to anything. So you're going to get the car lobby as well going about fuels and things like that for vintage cars and things like that. So we need the facts, and that's what we're asking you all to do, is give us the information so we can,
And is the questionnaire just asking about coal? Because we also have the problem with early diesels not being able to burn biofuels.
Yes, it is asking for diesel. It's asking for electricity. It's basically whatever you use to power.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Margaret.
Across the board.
All right then. Thank you all very much for the feedback. So we will hopefully get your answers back pretty smartly if you can put priority on it. And it probably, like Neil was saying, would be really good if you get a group of people together to discuss it and come up with the answers rather than just the poor old treasurer writing it out.
Yeah.
Get some feedback from the young ones as well, whatever, and put the answers down.
Yeah.
Grant, we might need to allow more than a couple of weeks then for people to have their next monthly meeting.
Yeah, we can have a wee think about that, Margaret.
Yeah.
All right. So is there any further questions on the climate missions, people? Have you got anything to add, Dan?
No. Grant, Lindsay, if I could just chip in, but just following up on the fact sheet type thing we're talking about, but there's sort of two parts to that. One is, I think there's some benefit in very quickly just getting out some basic facts about the fuels we use, the quantity we use, that side of things, rather than trying to put a full comprehensive thing that's sort of going to put our full case. I mean, that's going to take probably several months to coordinate and get out there, but just simple fact sheets that tell us how much carbon dioxide we generate in relation to the bigger picture, all of those sort of things, the simple stuff. So again, as Margaret said, we're all singing off the same hymn sheet. We're all parroting the same factual information rather than, a whole bunch of individual views or interpretations of what it is. I think that's quite important to get that out as early as possible. And then, the bigger picture stuff and where this group's going to go, etc., that'll come later. But I think just even having a one-page fact sheet with, the common sort of questions, the frequently asked question type thing, so that we've all got the same basic factual answers based on facts. So just a
That's good. Sorry, Dan, if you got anything to
add? Yeah, I think this has been an interesting dialogue. One thing that I encountered when I interviewed Steve Oates, who if memory serves, is the CEO of the Heritage Railway Association, so our equivalent in the UK, is that they've provided this set of talking points. If memory serves, it's the anecdote he rolls out is that all the barbecues in the UK over summer will use more, will create more emissions than the railways does. And he's seen that, proliferate across media and Parliament and stuff. So it is possible to create messages. But again, the reason why I went to the HRA is because they're both communicating, our necessity, our value and importance, but as well as providing guidance and support to organisations to transition, because it can't be just one thing, it has to be both. So I think I mention it in the document, if not, my apologies. They're open to lending us a hand, and I see the value in that is that we don't spend too much time nattering and figuring out and going through teething pains. Ideally, they will provide us some guidance so we can hit the ground running as soon as possible and hit that combination of positive lobbying as well as positive impact on lowering our emissions and transitioning.
What you've got to remember, guys, is that we do have a crisis with climate change. If we can use alternative fuels, we need to look at alternative fuels, because in the long run, it's the planet that we live on is deteriorating. So, no, it's not. We're just not going to argue the case. We need to come up with alternatives, and that will happen over time, I think. But when you think about the big picture, there is an issue.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Thank you very much for that. A couple of other topics. Shortly, we're going to advertise for a new chairman of the Heritage Technical Committee and the Heritage Operating Committee. And we need you, the members, to put people up if you think they're worthwhile as the chairmans. It doesn't have to be just mainline operators. For you guys that don't operate on the network, the Heritage Operating Committee and the Heritage Technical Committee are set up to allow trains to operate on the main line. The technical side looks after the mechanical, the operations side looks after all the paperwork and ensuring groups are certified. So if you think you've got a person that you think would be worthwhile putting up, we'll put out the job description and stuff to everybody. But as I stressed to you non-mainline operators, if you think you've got a person that would like to help out, ask them if they'd like to put their hand up and to be considered. Also, at our exec meeting, we had Murray King along from the Rail Heritage Trust, and he came up with an idea that we should be doing. It was just the week after the, not the Chris Cairns Foundation, but the level crossing one, that we should be having a Heritage Week.
Rail Safety Week.
Oh yeah, Rail Safety Week. Thank you, Margaret. But we should be having a week, and a Heritage Week would be good with certain subjects that we think are relevant, and that's what we'll be concentrating on during the week. What did we decide was going to be the first one, Margaret? Community, wasn't it?
I don't
remember either.
Yeah, but it's having each week having a focus on certain aspects of our industry. All right, and we decided that the week leading up to Labour weekend would be a Heritage Week. So the exec is looking at having a Heritage Week, and would you all like you to consider operating in that week? It doesn't have to be trains. It could be having museums open, inviting schools along. We would have a big promotion on the Monday before Labour weekend, and go up to Parliament and officially open it, and then we'd have events for the whole week. So we would like everybody involved. We did that. Somebody from the Rail Heritage Group brought it up at conference, and there was quite a few hands put up when we suggested that it would be a good idea. So we will send some information out to you, and we'd really, really like you to consider of doing something around that week to promote rail heritage.
But was it to start this year or next year?
It was next
sorry,
year,
Margaret?
Was it to start this year or next year?
Next year.
Next year.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So there's no panic in terms of something having to happen in the next.
So what is it, a Rail Heritage Week or a Rail Safety Week?
Rail Heritage Week.
Rail Heritage.
Okay.
And we'll have a topic or a focus I can't remember what the word, it was community or something about how, no, community is not quite the word, but it was
I think it
how,
was around volunteering.
no, that was another one.
Connections.
Connections, thank you, David.
100 years of Otira Tunnel, 160 years of Railways in New Zealand, 125 or 30 years of Dunedin Christchurch, lots of connections. There we go.
And 100 years of the Waiuku Railway.
You had to get that in, Neil. But yeah, like connections, you know, how the railway connected New Zealand.
Yeah.
How it connected families, and things like that, you know, and it just gets people to dream it all up, what they want to do. So we thought that was a really good topic to concentrate on. So we will send you out some information once we have a bit more think about how we're going to do it. That's Heritage Week. You'll see in the media too that they're doing an inquiry into interregional passenger transport, and FRONZ is going to put a submission in and speak to it. Closes the end of October. It's open to everybody if they want to put something in.
I think it's 16th of October. Right?
Yeah, end of October. So it's a good idea if you want to put a submission in. But as I say, FRONZ will be putting something in to that submission. Right, is there anything else you'd like to discuss while we're all together? All good?
Yep.
That's good to hear. All right. Thank you all very, very much for attending. Really appreciate it. I find these Zooms are quick and easy, and it saves on a whole lot of airfares. And it's a really good way to communicate. So I'm very pleased that you've all taken time out to listen to us talk, and it is very important. So I look forward to your responses to the questionnaire, and any feedback you can give us too would be appreciated as well.